Greetings, fellow leaders from the African continent and across the world. It's always lovely to host you here every Wednesday for these Digital Earth Africa live sessions. It's a perfect opportunity to connect with you, our user community, as we bring to you different topics as it relates to Earth observation. My name is Maud Nale. I'm the communications lead at Digital Earth Africa, and we're very, very excited to be hosting today's particular live session. Before I bring on our facilitator, today we're going to be talking about using Digital Earth Africa imagery to reveal patterns and risks in Africa through change detection. She was part of the panel in the International Women's Day roundtable that we hosted about 2 weeks ago. She's no stranger right here at Digital Earth Africa. I'm very pleased to welcome today's facilitator. Please join me in welcoming onto the virtual stage Senior Solutions Engineer from Esri, Pauline Okeyo. Pauline, confirming you're in the room and that you're ready.
So welcome everyone. Thank you to the Africa once again for giving us this opportunity to share about the collaboration we've done over the last few years, and most of it recently being over the last few months, to develop resources around access and use of imagery from the Africa. So I am Pauline, as Maud had mentioned, and as part of Esri, one of the things I've been supporting mainly is the Africa Geoportal. This is one of Esri's initiatives within Africa to support the access of data in various formats, tools and learning resources that will be relevant for tackling some of the challenges we have in the continent. And in addition to that, what we've been doing is also building a community or an environment that user communities across the continent will be able to leverage what we have as the platform and be able to make use of the resources there. So again, through the portal, we've been able to bring in data from various sources coming either at country level, or also data being made available through our relationship with some other key initiatives we have in Africa. So with DEAfrica, or Digital Earth Africa, again, this is something that Esri has been particularly interested in through our Africa Geoportal initiative, to make it possible for anyone interested in accessing imagery resources that have been put together by DEAfrica as layers that a user will be able to make use of within the platform. So if you're already a user on the on Africa Geoportal, again, you will be able to access this information and make use of it. But also, if you're not already a user, you can still make use of the resources. As with the site we have within Africa Geoportal that's dedicated to content from DEAfrica, we've made it possible for users to be able to discover information or layers, explore it just to see if it's viable for the kind of work they're interested in. Then beyond that, be able to derive insights from it. So be it use it for some form of analysis or so on. We've provided mechanisms that would make it usable within the continent. So if you scroll within the DEAfrica site on Africa Geoportal, you'll be able to access 2 applications. So the first one is the Executive Explorer, which is mainly targeted towards decision makers to have a way to look for insights for their specific area. So once someone selects a country, they're able to launch an application with the country centered, and from that point, they're able to interact with the information where we are working with the DEAfrica imagery to provide insights that will be relevant at that scale. And the other option is targeted to professionals who would need to interact with the imagery as layers and be able to make use of it for analysis. So just going back to this section, one of the activities that we also embarked on as part of our engagement with Africa was to create tutorials that would complement the applications that we have from Africa or built on Africa data, as well as just being able to make use of the imagery layers available there. So as our highlighted tutorial series, once that is launched, it will take a user to our documentation site for tutorials. And from this point, you can see the series that we've worked together with Africa to develop that would make that would allow anyone to understand how to start working with imagery, be able to perform change detection using the Explorer app, and finally, be able to take advanced steps when it comes to working with imagery for Africa. So today's session on my end will focus on some of the topics covered under change detection for Africa. And you can see it's something that ideally would take 40 minutes, but I would say from my experience as well as other people that we've noted is that normally it starts with 40 minutes, then whenever you start exploring further and seeing what is possible, it might actually take you longer because of the interest of what else you could do within the Explorer app. So for the lesson itself, as the tutorial itself, it just fits the standard tutorial format that we have from Esri, which is basically allowing you to take advantage of the tools or resources we have, in this case through Africa Geoportal. Then we have specific areas of exploration that you could take advantage of as you build capacity on how to use resources within Africa Geoportal that are tied to Africa. So once you launch the Africa Explorer app, which again you can launch from the Africa site, you'll be able to open the Explorer application. So this application consumes imagery from Africa, which again, you can have a look at the imagery that's available there. We can see we have the GeoMAD layers, Landsat and Sentinel layers, and other layers that we've been able to bring in from the Africa resource site. We also have other tools that will be useful for some analysis that you're interested in. And beyond that, using your Africa Geoportal account, you can sign in and from there be able to do some form of analysis. So I'll just embark on 2 scenarios, which will be looking at how can you access and make use of the Africa imagery from the Geoportal. So for my first location, I would like to look at an area in Kenya. This is Taita Taveta, so I'll just select it there and it will automatically zoom to that area. So once it zooms to the area, one of the things I could do, I could just switch my imagery. In this case, I want to look at Landsat. And you can see the renderer, which is being applied on the fly. It actually changes the band combination or the filters that are used to look at the particular area. So you can see as at 9th March 2023, that's the current situation in terms of Taita Taveta. But again, you'd be able to change this timestamp based on the time or the period you'd be interested in. So for example, if I take it all the way to 16th October 2022, and just give it time there to load, it will actually change. So I'll change my renderer to agriculture. And if I zoom in within my Taita Taveta area, I could see what was the current standing. But further to that, I can also just try to, again, look at this information to another timestamp. So I can try to look at what that area looked like 2 years before that. So I'll just try to adjust this slowly to 10th October 2020. So we just give that time to load. Again, if you want something that will be a bit more clearer for a particular scene where we would not have too much cloud cover, then you're able to adjust that. So if I look at my area of interest here in Taveta, I can see that within the area that would ideally be known as Tsavo West National Park, there was an incident that took place. So at this point, there were reports of fire taking place within the protected area. So we'll just try to see how can we take advantage of the tools available here to look at this particular place. So one of the things I would like to do is to create a mask. And for my particular mask, my interest is to look at one of the indices here. So this is soil adjusted vegetation index. Then I want to see the area that will be less than my threshold in terms of the understanding what will be the area that was actually affected by this fire. So I could draw around this area and just apply my index here together with my specified area that I would like below my index. And you can see the first automatic threshold being identified there is 0.13. And we can see it's being estimated about 572, almost 573 kilometers squared was affected by this fire. So some of the things just to try and improve on accuracy of this information is we could try to adjust, for example, the threshold a bit, just to make sure that only the relevant information is captured. Again, some of the things you could leverage as you're doing this is maybe adjust transparency so that you are able to confirm or to compare the underlying section with what you're getting as the mask. Just to get an understanding of what will be affected and so on. So whenever you have like this ability to adjust, it just helps you to refine the kind of output that you're interested in. So that's just a basic way of how you can do this kind of analysis. One of the things that is good about the Explorer app, again, this is something you could explore beyond the lesson, is you'd be able to add your own data. For example, if you're looking at if there are any facilities that are within the protected area or within the park, you could add that to see which facilities were affected. If you have information on vegetation or land cover within the protected area, you could add this information. Then you could do your own analysis and see, based on the about 565 kilometers squared, how much of it was scrub land, how much of it was probably forest land, and so on. And these are insights that will be very relevant to people involved in protected area management and so on. But beyond that, if you want to make use of this information outside your environment, then it is very possible. You can actually export this for use in various formats. So once you click on image export, you could select like the layer that you'd like for use for that. So it could be the result image, for example. And again, you can save this to your portal or save to disk. So for example, if you want to share this insight with someone immediately on a report, you'll be able to, for example, save it on disk. But if you want to use it for additional work, probably add it to a web map and so on, then you can save it to portal. So at this point, you could put in a title. So I'll just pick this information from sticky that I have here. So for my title, I can have my Savo Barnska. Then for my description, again, just to make it easier for someone to know what this information is about. So I'll just make it clear. This is tied to a fire incident that took place back in 2020. And finally, for tags, which make sure that this information can be searched and found, I can use just keywords that would be relevant to try to have this information. So once I save this, I'll be able to make use of it within my Africa Geoportal environment. So with Africa Geoportal, every user, other than getting an identity within the platform, they're able to create maps, do analysis, be able to share out information as applications and so on. So once you are able to create this resulting image, you would have it within your contents folder and start making use of it and so on. So another scenario that you could look at is the aspect of inundation. So we'd find that in the event of growing water extents, we have areas that will be affected. So how can we use this tool based on the steps on our tutorial there and the Africa data or the Africa app to be able to look at that? So my second scenario here, I'll try to switch to another location. I'll just paste in my location there. So this is in Chad. And I'll zoom out. So you can see this is a water body. Let me just zoom out properly. Within Chad, which again, we are seeing from the imagery in natural color. So we'll just give it time to actually load based on the renderer that we have for agriculture. Let me just try to do this again. Let me just change. So again, we'll just try to apply the same process to be able to look at this scenario. And in a particular scenario, we're trying to see how the water extents may have changed during 2 different times to do a comparison over the place. So I'll use the compare imagery tool, where we will look at 2 periods based on the imagery tool to be able to do this. Let me just try to do this again. So I will try to zoom to my area in Chad. Change my imagery to Landsat here. Change my rendering to change my rendering to agriculture. So we have that visible for that particular extent. Then I want to compare 2 periods. So I'll have my left side and my right imagery. So for Landsat, I'll just select my date here. And for this side, I am trying to get to May 2022. That's on my left side. And on my right side, again, still looking at this image, still working with Landsat. I'll select my date. And I will look at July 2022. So I'll just quickly step through the different timestamps. So if I just do a simple comparison, I can see within the short period, the change over the area, and we can see there's a change in water extent over the different places, which can now actually help us to determine the inundated areas and so on. So to do that, I can try to detect change between the 2 periods. And to be able to do that, I will use the water index. I'll use a difference mask. Then I will draw a polygon over my particular area. So I'll just quickly sketch over this area and apply. So the tool will just run and it will try to highlight for me the inundated areas. So again, with these adjustments, you're able to just slowly move around the 2 ways of adjusting to try and estimate areas where there's been positive change in terms of inundation and negative change. So we can see if I play around with my negative, take it to the extreme, what it looks like. But in this case, I'm trying to see where there's a positive change in extent. So if I continue to adjust this, again, you can take advantage of this transparency lever here just to help you get a clearer view of what's happening down there underneath. If I do my adjustments, I'll be able to determine the inundated area. So once you get that information, again, it could be used to provide insights. So an example will be if you have information on facilities. So for example, OpenStreetMap has data, other organizations, even at country level agencies, they have data that you could easily be able to add. You'd be able to add from Access Online using your account. So once you add this data, so for example, health facilities that will be affected, or education facilities, households, or buildings. So this is information that's already available and captured. You can add this information and use it to get that insight on what has been affected, for you to be able to create an output as an image, save on disk to be shared out or on the portal, or you can now also extract this information, add it to a web map, and use to provide those kinds of insights. So that's an example of how this will be useful in that kind of scenario. The final example I have is for when we have urban areas and we're trying to see what kinds of changes have taken place and so on. So for urban growth, I will move to one of the most recognized, fastest growing towns. And this is Esri in Ghana. So I'll just zoom in a bit there, and I can use my Sentinel-2 imagery to do this comparison. So if I start in 2017 with the GeoMAD, because the good thing with the GeoMAD layers is that they're very clear. So if I zoom, if I look at my January 2017, and if I look at my 2020 layers, if I'm doing that, I'm able to tell a difference, but I could still use my compare tool, which will allow me to select 2017 as the first side, and 2020 as my other side, other image. So doing that comparisons, I can already start telling towards the northern part, there's a bit of difference in terms of how Efidoase has changed over the last 4 or so years. So again, I'm able to use my tool here to do my change. So I'll just look at, I'll use the SAV, SABI index. I can try to draw, for example, or I can just run this as it is. So again, one of the things that I could do is just to play around and adjust these different levels here, just to get that kind of comparison and so on. So again, it will be possible to draw within an extent, or you could just, again, also apply without drawing the polygon extent and so on. So from that also, you're able to see clearly areas that have experienced positive urban growth, whereby the surrounding vegetation has been replaced by urbanization, or and this is again insights that can be used to establish things like planning, trying to project what will be the expected change in terms of urbanization within the area and so on. So those are just examples of how you're able to use the tools we have within the Africa Explorer app, using the different layers available to be able to detect change over the different areas. So this is just part of the learning resources that we have. So I'll just go back to our site here. So if you come to the land page of Africa Geoportal, you are able to access tutorials that we've put together that will be helpful for some of the areas of capacity building you'd be interested in. All of these are just lessons touching on Africa. So if we look at working with imagery, for Africa, we can see from that site, we have a number of tutorials, series, like the one we've just covered, and other things that will allow you to build capacity on how to work with imagery across Africa. And this is just something you'd be able to make use of in terms of resources for learning. So with that, thank you once again. I'd like to hand it over back to the Africa team. Thank you.
What a very rich and comprehensive session. Thank you so much to you, Pauline. I'm going to announce those two websites again in case you missed them. The first one is www.africageoportal.com. And the second one, which is the Digital Earth Africa Explorer, is livingatlas, and then the number 2.arcgis.com/Digital Earth Africa. Thank you so much to you, Pauline. I trust you found this session to be very useful. If you have any questions, you're more than welcome to drop them in the chat box, and we'll definitely get Pauline to answer those questions for you. Thank you for sharing those details, Pauline. And of course, as Digital Earth Africa, we never want to leave without giving you an opportunity to connect with us. So please do connect with us on any of the platforms that are just on your screen. We are on www.digitalearthafrica.org. You can also email us info@digitalearthafrica.org. And we're also on Twitter, LinkedIn, as well as YouTube by the same name, digitalearthafrica.org. We host these live sessions every Wednesday. Today it was in English. Next week it's going to be in French. So if you are part of a French community or working on improving your French, and or you're just looking for a space where you can engage with other Francophones, please do join us next week, the 29th of March. And the topic that we're going to be discussing is La Surveillance des Forêts, surveillance, forest monitoring in English, the direct translation. It's been an absolute honor. Pauline, yet again, thank you so much for being our facilitator today. It's always lovely to have you here as part of our family and as one of our partners on the continent. Thank you so much for your time and for your expertise. We will see you again next